focus report. And a new documentary called The Dropbox has been making waves around the world. It's about a South Korean church leader who's behind a scheme to adopt hundreds of abandoned babies. Well, sadly, there's been a drastic rise in the number of times that's been happening in recent years, and it's been blamed on a change to the country's adoption laws. Mary Linton and Justin McCurry have this report from Seoul.
This simple box, placed discreetly in a Seoul backstreet, is the last resort for women who believe they're unable to look after their newborn child.
When someone opens the door and leaves a baby inside, a light turns on, and there is a ring to notify people upstairs. The mothers can also talk to us from the street.
Lee installed the baby box outside his orphanage for disabled children in 2009. He says he's never seen so many babies left behind anonymously by their troubled mothers. These days, about 20 babies are left in the box every month, compared to just 2 a month a few months ago. Now the pastor is waiting to transfer 3 infants to the city's social services. Lee says a recently introduced special adoption law is behind the rise in the number of abandoned babies. The law, enacted in August 2012, requires mothers to keep their newborns for at least a week before deciding whether or not to keep them. They must also register the child's birth and give their own names to the authorities. Lee believes the law unfairly punishes single mothers, who are still frowned upon in South Korean society.
The yellow post-it notes mark out the letters I have received from mothers since the special adoption law was passed. Now I have 3 files full of letters. This one reads, "I'm sorry I gave birth to this child. I'm underage, so I cannot register to birth."
Since the end of the Korean War in 1953, more than 160,000 South Korean children have been adopted overseas. The number of children from South Korea put up for international adoption is among the highest in the world. Some have gone on to become famous in their adoptive countries, such as the French Representative Minister Fleur Pellerin. The new adoption law was supposed to lower the number of abandoned children and stem the flow of those adopted overseas. In fact, since the law was enacted, the number of children left behind illegally and anonymously has increased.
The best thing for a child is to be raised by his mother. If that's impossible, then adoption inside South Korea is the next best option. International adoption should be a last resort, and the adoptive parents must undergo thorough background checks.
INCAS, an organization for adopted South Koreans, is celebrating the Chinese New Year with those who've returned to South Korea to find out about their past. The new adoption law has divided opinion among adoptees. Some believe it'll improve transparency and help adoptees trace their biological parents.
I think it's good to have registration of the mother's name along with the child's name when they're born. So I think it's a really good way for adoptees to try to connect back if they ever do try to do a birth search or want to learn about where they're from.
But others disagree with the crackdown on international adoptions.
I disagree with the prioritization of domestic adoptions. I only know from my experience and my friend's experience back home, but we had great childhoods, and we were very grateful to be adopted.
The number of South Korean children adopted overseas went into decline in the 1980s. It's continued to fall, from about 900 a year to 300 a year since the new adoption law went into effect.
Well, time for a short break here on France 24. When we come back, the world siding with Ukraine over events in Crimea. At the UN General Assembly, more than 100 countries have voted for a resolution calling the recent referendum there illegal. We'll have more from UN headquarters in New York right after this.